everyone. Welcome to episode 12. We're at a dozen episodes. We're going to talk about what just happened this past weekend, Carnival in Europe, Mardi Gras in the States. It's essentially the same thing. Because when I tell people here that in Germany we celebrate Carnival, they think that it's merry-go-rounds and roller coasters for kids at a school fair, kind of. But that's not what Carnival is. Carnival is technically Mardi Gras for the same reason, same religious reason, the last weekend of hooray and being able to gorge yourself on stuff before Lent for Christians.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that Americans, in your experience, think of it as like the carnival with Ferris wheels and rides and stuff, because I think this is just another example of, right, growing up in an immigrant family. My mom's from Brazil, and so when we like Carnival to me was like the movie Rio, right? Like where everyone is just like big parades and big like fancy costumes going down the street and dancing on the beach. And so
That's
anyway,
right.
Episode 12, grab your cup of tea. I've got mine. Astrid's got hers, and let's talk Carnival.
Welcome to Culture Clash Parenting, the podcast where Astrid and Marisa share their joys and challenges of raising kids in foreign lands. Join us for heartwarming tales, practical tips, and lots of laughter as we navigate language barriers, blend traditions, and celebrate the beautiful mess of parenting across cultures. Let's dive into this adventure together.
So, yeah, like I said, it has nothing to do with the word carnival in English. And I actually, in the United States, I live in a place where Mardi Gras is celebrated. It's not New Orleans, which is the big United States Mardi Gras, I don't know, the festival part. I mean, it's like, if everybody kind of knows what it is, New Orleans is right up here, where just people actually drive there for Mardi Gras. If it falls together with spring break in college we would drive from Chicago all the way to New Orleans just to celebrate Mardi Gras. Didn't realize St. Louis had it, and it was only 5 hours as opposed to 12.
Could have saved all that driving time.
Right, we would have saved a lot of driving time. So St. Louis has a pretty big Mardi Gras celebration, but it's also several days. There are beats being thrown, so floats going through the town on, I think, Saturdays, maybe. I've never been, honestly, because I went to college, exactly. But basically, in the United States, Mardi Gras is a festival that's only happening that weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We do have a dog parade, too, where people dress up their dogs and parade them through the city. And again, beats are being thrown to the kids and candy as well, not nearly as much as in Germany, because this is the carnival I grew up with in Germany. From Thursdays through Tuesdays before Ash Wednesday, it's just one big celebration. I mean, basically, Tuesday, you're trying to sober up from being drunk from Thursday through Monday. The biggest days are Thursday and then Sunday and Monday. So Friday, Saturday, still a little bit of a party, but it's more maybe private parties where you have a costume parties. So my birthday often fell with Carnival. So I often had a birthday party as a kid where everybody came dressed in a costume. Because kids dress up. So it's a little bit like Halloween where kids dress up and they get candy, but they have to stand sometimes in the freezing cold or the snow outside. So, again, like Halloween, you put
like
on your
Halloween, depending on where you live.
Well, exactly. Like in New York, I'm sure your mother made you wear your costume over your winter coat over your costume anyway, a la Seinfeld, right? Didn't he had a skit like that? Like,
he did.
Yeah. It doesn't matter because my mother's going to make me wear my winter coat over my costume anyway. But so that you put on a costume, you put on your makeup, and you go outside and you watch the parade. And from the floats, people throw candy or oftentimes even like soccer balls, frisbees are super popular. I mean, you bring a big bag and you can get a ton of toys and cool stuff. So yes, kids love it. Adults love it because they get to drink. Um, and and the floats are, unlike at Mardi Gras that I've seen here, they are much more cynical and sarcastic and generally politically motivated. And if you YouTube this year's carnival, especially if you're in the United States, you may or may not be pleased. But yeah, we have no qualms about the kids seeing those. Again, cultural difference. That's what culture clash parenting is all about, right? Our kids grow up in a different culture and they may or may not go, why would you do that? To us, it's completely normal. And I don't think the kids actually see it, honestly. I think the floats are more for the adults, especially the political ones, where the adults can then, one, they have something to talk about or something to fight about, or to get drunk over, depending on what it is. But the kids, they care about the candy. I don't remember as a kid going, oh, well, I totally understand that because I watched the news yesterday. No.
Yeah.
So,
or like even remembering which float sent like through. You just remember. I'm thinking here, not so much carnival parades, but like when the Tour de France comes by and like you have the big caravan and they're throwing things. Like the kids never remember which truck threw what thing to them. They just remember the things that they got, right? Like you said,
right.
Like the bag that they filled. So I have a question. One, is the dog walk called like Mardi Gras or something? Like, do they make like fun little play? Because I feel like that's really American too. Like, what kind of fun word can we come up with?
No, I think it's just called the dog parade.
The dog parade.
Yeah, because it's sponsored by Purina, so it's the Purina dog parade.
So, I love that you started by sharing too that like it has its roots in religion, right? Because
yeah,
I don't know if you can hear this, but it's Wednesday as we're recording this, and the church behind our house is ringing the bells because it's mass right now for I assume for Ash Wednesday.
You're assuming correctly, I'm sure.
And well, it's also sunset and it's Ramadan. So, but I know that's the church, not the mosque. So, yes. So I think they're calling people to mass for Ash Wednesday, but Mardi Gras is that, right? It means in French Fat Tuesday. So it's the day where you are allowed to eat as much and drink as much and complete debauchery before you go into Lent, like you said. And
you gorge yourself. Come on, yourself.
Like fat. It's okay to get fat because you're going to go into Lent and like imposed diets. And it's interesting because, and you spoke to this too when we were talking about this before we hit record. I was in Paris yesterday, and on the way up there, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Mardi Gras. Like we were going to a concert. And so I was like, okay, like we just need to be extra conscientious when we leave the concert about the streets and the metro going back to our hotel. Like they could be full of drunk people who have just left the bars for Mardi Gras. And I've lived here long enough, I should probably know this. It like nothing happens on Tuesday. Like it really, like there was nothing. It was just a normal Tuesday. Because like you said, like the celebrations tend to be on the weekends, because even though it's school holiday here, like the parents are still working. And even today when we were walking around Paris, just like walking past the business districts and everybody's in their business suits and just kind of doing their work thing. So it is really interesting. And here too, like in Bordeaux, the big Mardi Gras or Carnival parade is this weekend. And they do a big thing. And here, they have Monsieur le Carnaval and Madame le Carnaval, and it's like it's kind of like Burning Man. So they have these big like paper mache, like ginormous statues. And at the end of the parade, everybody just like sort of yells at the carnival man and woman, like all the things that they hate. And like, it's part of that sort of like casting your sins and stones at the carnival people, and then they light them on fire and they just burn.
Wow.
And part of it is like releasing, like I've heard both. I've heard people who yell like the things that they want to release from themselves. So they use it as like as a purification, self-purification. And then other people who are just like angry and mad, and they're like, these are all the things that I want to change. And so it's not personal, it's about like the system. And I wonder if historically it was about the church. I don't know. But when our kids used to celebrate Carnival at school, they always had Monsieur le Carnaval and Madame le Carnaval, and they usually had the oldest kids. So they would have like a big party for the parents and everything, and the kids, the oldest grade, would get to like yell all of the things that and then they didn't light it on fire at the school, but they would kind of bash him like a piñata. And so yeah, so it's just kind of like you said, it's like and there'd be candy inside, and so they would like then all run and get their candy. So it really was about the celebration and the fun and the debauchery before Lent.
Tuesday. That's interesting that your kids got off school.
Well, they didn't get off school. Like, I mean, they always had a carnival at school, but
okay.
But school holidays, like you were talking about spring break, right? Like it tends to be around the time that carnival is happening. So it's not always like, and this is another episode too, but like in France, they have zones. They break up the country into zones. And so the vacations, school holidays are based on your zone. And that way, it's like not everybody's on vacation at the same time. And so this year, 2 of the zones, so my kids go back to school on Monday. So they have the last 2 weeks off. And then another zone had last week and this coming week off. And then the other zone will have next week and the week after. So like 2 of the 3 zones this year had carnival, no school during carnival.
Okay, yeah, not in Germany. Like the carnival, you don't have any break that revolves around carnival, because carnival is never late enough to coincide with spring break, because we have Easter break. So because carnival is 40 days before Easter, hence the Lent part, they break doesn't start until at least 30 days after carnival if Easter falls towards the latter end of it.
Because we'll have break in April as well.
Yeah, but they have a 2-week Easter break, or we used to have 3 weeks. Eventually, you do too. Nice. But definitely. I mean, I went to an all-girls Catholic school from like 5th through 13th grade, so we were definitely at school on Wednesday to get our little cross on the forehead. But there was a big mass that we pilgered to, like a bigger mass. It wasn't just the chapel at school that did this. But in terms of being off for Fasching, which is what it's also called, or Carnival, the high towns that have it are Mainz, Cologne, and Düsseldorf. So if your school happens to be really close to that, there's much more of a chance that you'll get the Monday off as well. But
so your parents can
if you're in Bavaria, yeah, I don't think you get Mondays off, or wherever you just don't celebrate it, right?
Yeah. Well, and we were talking before, like growing up in New York, there was Mardi Gras. I mean, I remember, and that's why I think I was shocked that people weren't going out to the bars yesterday in Paris, because I do remember being in high school and then coming back for spring break. Like if Mardi Gras was happening when I was back home, like the bars were always having a big thing on Mardi Gras on the Tuesday in New York. But we were talking about how, like, growing up in a Jewish family, we have Purim, which is a historical event that happened. And, but as part of the story. And I don't really want to go into the whole story of what Purim is, but as part of the story, there was a big party that was had, and there are these characters, historical figures. And so now Purim is celebrated by retelling the story. And it's a big party, and you get dressed up as the characters from the story. And the kids get candy and their special cookies called Hamantaschen that were in the shape of the hat of the evil villain of the story, whose name was Haman. And you yell when his name is said when the story is retold. And yeah, so I always just, when people are like, "Oh, what's Purim?" I'm like, well, it's kind of the Jewish Carnival. It's kind of the easiest way to describe it to people who have never experienced it, because it's like a festival and a parade and costumes and yes, we also would have to wear our coats over our costumes when we would go to synagogue or to Hebrew school for the parties. But yeah, it's interesting how, and it's one of the things we talk about a lot in an interfaith family. Like, a lot of these of religions have holidays that end up happening around the same time and are celebrated in similar ways. And it's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg in some ways. And I always thought that, it's kind of like, oh, well, like the Christians are celebrating this and the Jews are celebrating this, so we're all just celebrating right now. Like, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And this year's been really cool. I mean, like, the fact that it's Ramadan happening at the same time that all this is happening, since Ramadan changes every year, it's actually been really interesting to speak to our Muslim friends as well, because it's like, well, we're all celebrating something right now. And Purim is next week, so it's like Mardi Gras and Ash Wednesday this week, and then Carnival this weekend, and then next weekend is Purim, and our friends who are celebrating and participating in Ramadan this month. It's like everybody is kind of has something to talk about and share stories of at this time. So
It's interesting you said that, just because, and this is definitely a whole nother episode, but and we've talked about this before, but when all the religion, or the three big religions anyway, that we know more of, they all celebrate something at the same time. So Purim, Lent, then which is actually called fasting time in German, Fastenzeit. This is so much easier than Lent. Like, it actually, again, the Germans are like, this is what it is. You are fasting, so it's fasten time. But then you have Passover and Easter, which always kind of falls together, and Christmas and Hanukkah, and it's. But again, Ramadan is fasting too. So somewhere, at least those three religions, maybe Lessing, Gotthold Ephraim Lessing, he wrote this German book that almost everybody has to read in German class. It's called Nathan the Wise. So Nathan is the Jewish guy, and then he meets with an Arab and a Christian guy, and at some point he tells this ring parable of where somehow all the religions are looked upon as the same way, and they must have the same root somewhere, right?
Yeah,
because they're all celebrating something at the same time,
right? They all have their roots in, like, Abraham is the father of all the religions, right?
Right.
Of all three. And it's interesting because we have Lag BaOmer. So we have Omer, which is like a period of 40 days also, where that's around Passover as well. That's like the 40 days that the represents the 40 days that the oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on my history. So if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. I'll have to Google it. I totally messed up Omer. But I'm trying now. I'm like, is it before or after? Is it just like the Jewish equivalent of Lent, or is it after? It's after Passover. But
I don't know.
But in any case, right. But we also have like a festival of 40 days that happens, that like where you have the
fasting.
It's not fasting, but it's like a period of being kind of more intentional and mindful and there you have the fast of Esther, which it happens right before Purim, as part of that story where Esther was fasting and asking God whether or not she should reveal that she was Jewish when her husband's consigliere Haman told him to kill all the Jews. That's really what they call him. And so so she, she was fasting to decide whether she was going to reveal that she was Jewish to him. And so there are these periods, like you said, that are all really similar in all these religions. And then on top of it, like it happens around springtime, right? So so the pagan religions or the pagan traditions also have festivals that happen around now because they have like Ostera and around the equinox. And
you know more about this than I do because you wrote a book about it.
I wrote a book about it.
Yes, Marisa actually published a book on Everybody Celebrates.
Yeah,
and all the different religious celebrations. So check it out.
Not all of them. There's only like 50.
Only did 50, but you did a lot of research for it, and it's a great book. So
that's why I'm like, how can I not remember Lag BaOmer? But there is, right? I mean, that was the whole point of the book, was that all of these different practices, all of these different traditions, all of these different cultures, all of these different religions at the end of the day kind of have these themes that we celebrate throughout the year. And spring is a time of rebirth. And so there's a lot of festivals are around that concept of rebirth. So
getting back to the Hamantaschen, you said it was in the
Carnival and Hamantaschen and food, because if you've been following us long enough, we can't go to an episode without talking about the food part.
No, we're into food. But you said the Hamantaschen were in the shape of the triangular hat that Haman wore. I'm not sure why they did the hat of the villain. Couldn't they find a good guy whose hat they could
eat it? You eat it and destroy it, and you're like, and you eat as fast and as many as you can.
So, but anyway, it's a sweet dish. It's jelly. The dough gets folded over in a triangular way, and there's jelly in the middle. And the German version for Carnival is Krapfen, which is almost a little bit like a donut, but again, different shape. And there could be jelly. There may not be jelly in it. I'm not really sure. I was never too much into those. But either way, it's a sweet, fried, fatty dish. Again, goes with the name Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras or whatever the German one is. Why am I blanking on that? I think they just call it Falsche Dienstag, because Rosenmontag, Rose Monday, that's the big one.
Rose Monday. So there's Rose Monday and then Fat Tuesday, and because I've never heard of Rose Monday outside of you sharing right now, right? No, not even here. But so I don't know if it's a German thing. So that's really interesting because I've just heard of Mardi Gras and then Ash Wednesday. So those are the only two that are on our calendar as well. That comes from
Mardi Gras and Ash Wednesday. Yeah, I don't think Mardi Gras is even on a German calendar. I might need to go check, but yeah, I think Ash Wednesday is the only one. Thursday before, when the celebrations start, that one is a little interesting. So I'll just take a minute. That's when it's Alte Weiber, which literally is old wives or old women. But that's a day where the women all go celebrate. I'm sure it started way back when the men had to go on the field and the women were home. So they started the celebration off with that. But it ended up being where even in an office setting or at school, male colleagues or male teachers wear a tie. They usually wear an old one. I remember my father had multiple just old cheap ties that if they weren't worn anymore or good enough to wear to a business meeting, my mother would put them aside for Alte Weiber. Because at work then, all the women carry around scissors and they cut off a piece of the tie because it's the day for women. So it's a little bit like the phallic symbol being cut off, but there's definitely some to that. There's the woohoo, we can do whatever we want one day a year. Yeah, okay, minus Mother's Day maybe, but
and it's right around now, like International Women's Day, which is right
around the same time, right? Like right now, International Women's Day.
So funny. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I think I'm trying to remember. I feel like there's something about, well, obviously when people die in Judaism, you rip clothes. But I feel like I wonder if there's some connection
to the cutting part, maybe.
Yeah, but also when you were talking, like I was thinking about the fast of Esther, because even though it's not like women don't get to celebrate it like with debauchery, but it is considered a very holy time for Jewish women because it's the only fast in the Jewish calendar that only women perform. And there's some fasts that women don't have to perform, and you don't have to perform a fast if you're pregnant. But there's like this holiness to Purim because there's this heroine, Esther, and I would also argue that Vashti, who was the queen who was killed before Esther became like Esther was the second wife. But yeah, like it is this sort of very powerful feminine or holiday that celebrates the feminine in the Jewish year. So it's really interesting. And I just Googled it and Omer's after Passover. So I'm like, so we can talk about that in another episode. It was like, this is bothering me.
Yeah, as Passover and Easter is coming up,
yeah,
we're going to get to it. We're also going to talk about food in that episode. So if you're curious as to what people eat for Easter and Passover, just, about 2 episodes down the road, just tune back in.
So I love this because going back, we all like ending with the food. It speaks to, because of this debauchery part, right? Because like the fact that it is like the fat, the candy, the like cookies, the donuts, right? It really is about
fattening up
the food that you and I love to talk about the most, the sweets, the stuff that gives you sugar highs and sugar crashes.
Because we don't sleep a lot.
You don't. And I will say that I think for me, and I know you and I talk a lot about how we around the culture clash parenting, right? And how we like keep our traditions alive in our children, raising them in a culture outside of our own. And for me, making Hamantaschen with my children is one of the traditions that we do in this around carnival time. And so half the time I don't even know when Purim is. But I'm always like, oh, it's carnival. So Purim's around now. So I'm going to make Hamantaschen with my kids. And so it is one of those, I think it is a holiday or a time of year where, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to record this episode, where it really is about the family and really is about celebration. And so it's for us become an opportunity to create these traditions, making the cookies, or like I said, like when my kids were little and taking them to the parade and hearing you talk about like going to the like week long parade.
And the dog parade. We took Cora to the dog parade last year. This year, somehow we missed it, but we did last year. It was fun.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of like the really fun things, right? Is like anytime you have an opportunity, even if it's like, oh, there's this like this is how the culture we're living in now celebrates, or the part of the world that we're living in now celebrates this. It gives us an opportunity to talk about how we celebrated it growing up, or like what was different, and to share that with our kids so that they can also, learn that not everybody does things exactly the same way.
Well, one, I think it gives us kind of a window to our past, and we can talk about that. or even if we don't really, because I obviously last year had just turned 3. I wasn't going to get into a lot of detail. Oh, but my mom made it differently. I think later in life, as they hopefully, third culture children are hopefully not going to ever stay in their own backyard and want to go explore more of the world and are open to a ton of other things, then they will, oh, wait, I remember going there as a kid. Oh, this is different. And then they will want to learn more about it, even if I neglected to introduce them to that. So even if you're raising first culture children in the same neighborhood that you grew up in, you can still by taking them to different celebrations and just engage their curiosity about different religions, different traditions, diversity for that matter. You can still instill this curiosity in them, and then they'll be much more equipped to get in touch with something else and go, oh, wait, yeah, maybe, oh, I can relate that to this. Or, oh, this is something that I've never heard of. Let me find out more about it. And I think it makes our kids so, and I'm talking about our kids as a global community, right? It makes them so much more empathetic and open to new things. And it's generally not a bad thing.
I agree.
And it's because we are, like that, and we were brought up like that, both of us, in different countries and with parents from different countries. But let us know if there are any cultural traditions that you have that's around this time, maybe, and what it entails. Definitely let us know what kind of food it entails. We're curious.
Totally. We want to hear about the food. We want to hear about the parades. We want to hear about floats you remember from your childhood, but especially the food and especially the desserts.
Yeah, and any of that. See, let us know if it relates to your culture, if it relates to the country you're currently living in. Let's get a conversation about that.
Yeah, and I would love to hear too. Like, have you ever been to carnival or carnival celebrations in a place other than your own? Because like I love hearing that, like, that you would drive down to New Orleans and have that experience of Mardi Gras. And I never got to go to Brazil during Carnival because it's always like the most expensive time to fly there, and usually what happened when it wasn't, we didn't have a school holiday break. But it was awesome to like see the pictures from my cousins and hear them talk about it, and to hear my mom's stories about Carnival from when she was a kid. And my brother got to go a couple of years ago. And so, yeah. But I got to enjoy it here. Now I want to go to Germany. Next year, we're going to have to go to Germany. We'll have to meet in Germany next year. Because, yeah.
And where I grew up is exactly between Düsseldorf and Cologne. So we can do Düsseldorf on Sunday and Cologne on Monday.
It's a date. Who's joining us? Let us know if you want to come join us.
Yeah. And also, here's one more favor we have to ask of you. So we started off doing this as just a podcast, and then we started putting it on YouTube too. We'd love to know what you guys prefer. If you have a preference, if you have a suggestion on what we could do differently, if you can email us at cultureclashparenting@gmail.com, or we're also on Instagram and, obviously YouTube, your podcast. But get in touch with us and let us know, because we want to learn. This is only our 12th episode. Before we were like, oh, this is already our 12th episode. But yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're still toddlers. We're still in the toddler phase.
Yes, teach us.
Yes, teach us. And we, like we said, want to hear your stories. And if there are any topics you want us to share as well, we're always making lists and looking for ideas for new topics to share. Click like and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Yeah, can't wait to see you again. Bye.